Hello class and welcome to another lesson. Today's lesson is on evaluating expressions. Please make sure you title your paper, and here's the first slide. Here are a couple definitions. We've learned these in class, but we're going to go over them again. So if you haven't written them down or if you don't have these in your notebook, please make sure you pause and write them in. Here's our first definition. A term is the name given to a number, variable, or a number and variable combined by multiplication or division. So if I gave you this expression, please write this in your notebook. 4y squared minus 6m plus 7. Okay, so we have 3 terms here in this expression. So you can even write this down and write that these are examples of terms. Okay, so we have 4y squared, we have minus 6m, and we have 7. There are 3 terms here. Next one, we have a coefficient. Again, we went over this in class for some of you. Some of you may have missed that lesson. So a coefficient is the number multiplied by the variable in an algebraic expression. So it has to be next to a variable. So in this expression we have 2 coefficients. We have 4 and negative 6. Okay, so 4 and negative 6 are our coefficients. 7 is not a coefficient because it doesn't have a variable. Okay, next one, we have a variable. This is the name given to an unknown number. And so our variables here are y and m. Okay, the constants remember, are terms that don't have a variable. So our constants here, or our constant, is 7. So 7 is the only term in this expression that does not have a variable. So these are not constants because they have variables attached to them. So our constant here is 7. All right? Please make sure you study these definitions. They will be on your test. Here's the next slide. Here's another definition. Evaluate. This means to find the value of an expression by substituting numbers for variables. So we are going to be solving now our expressions so that we will get an answer. Okay, so here's the next slide. In this first problem, we need to list the terms in the expression below, placing a comma between each term. Okay, so how many terms do we have? Well, we have 3 terms here, and they are 12ab, please make sure you pause and write this down. They are 8cd, and we also have negative 9. There are 3 terms here. Okay, part B. List the coefficients in the expression below, placing a comma between each coefficient. Remember, the coefficient is the number next to the variable. Okay, so we have 2 coefficients here. 11 is not a coefficient because remember, co means with. It needs to be with a variable. So 11 does not have a variable, so it is not a coefficient. The coefficients we have here are negative 3 and negative 2. Okay, so you're going to need to explain in class why 11 is not a coefficient, or a constant is not a coefficient. All right, here's the next problem. Evaluate 8y minus 22 for y equals 9. So if we are substituting in, this means, so evaluate means we are going to substitute a number in for y. And so look how I set this up. Please make sure this is in your notebook. Make sure you pause the video and write this down. So I put in 8 parentheses 9, close parentheses, minus 22, the rest of the problem. So I do this because we know that the parentheses means we need to multiply. And we know that 8y means 8 times y. So I can't just write 8, 9. I need to put this in parentheses so I know to multiply. So 8 times 9, we're going to write it right below, is 72. And this is how you should write this in your notebook. You should write it right below it. Okay, and 72 minus 22 is 50. And look how I wrote each expression that came after it. After I combined terms, I write it right underneath. So that equals 50. So that is our answer. Okay, here's the next problem. So evaluate the following expressions for x equals 2, y equals 3, and z equals 9. So we are going to be substituting or evaluating using these numbers. Okay, so x, we have x equals 2, so we're going to write in parentheses the x, and so 2 times 2 equals 4 plus 1, this equals 5. And make sure if you need to rewatch this, please do. If you need to rewatch the last problem, please do. I put this in parentheses. You must also. Okay, next one, we have z minus x. Well, we know z equals 9, so we can just write in 9 minus, for x it equals 2. So we can write 9 minus 2, and that equals 7. Okay, for number 3, y, we know it equals 3. So we just have 3 plus 5, and that equals 8. Oh. And z divided by y, we know z equals 9 and y equals 3. So we need to write it like this. Make sure you write it like this. This means 9 divided by 3, and that equals 3. If you need to pause and rewatch this section, make sure you do. Here's the homework for tonight. Alright, you have 2 problems. Make sure you do them all. Make sure you read it carefully, and I will see you tomorrow.